I think, Mr. Heller, would you like to ask another round?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let the record reflect that the Pac-12 is dominating the discussion today.
Amen.
Having said that, I want to go back to you, Ms. Gilligan. I believe the question and the comments that are based, from what I've heard since I've been in the committee, is how to speed up the process, how to get through some of the hoops. Would it make any sense for the FAA to work with the 6 designated test sites to give them certificates of authorizations with broader authority? Now, something called a blanket geographic COAs?
Yes, sir, and we are looking at doing that in a number of the test sites. In addition, for the test site in Nevada, they actually have been the first test site that have a designated airworthiness representative who can issue experimental certificates to anyone who would want to fly their unmanned system in that particular test site. We think that's another way to encourage manufacturers to bring
Explain that to me one more time.
Say again?
What
Yes, sir.
does Nevada have?
So we have initiated a program that would allow for the test sites to identify an individual.
Is that called Train the Trainer? Is that?
In this case, not exactly.
Okay.
What they are doing is identifying individuals who are experienced in aviation. They go through specific training that the FAA is offering, and they can then be designated by the FAA to issue experimental certificates for unmanned systems. Much like the certificate that the FAA issued to Amazon, this would be a designated individual connected with the individual test site. And we're setting it up only for the test site so that, again, there is that opportunity for the test site to be able to draw manufacturers who may want to do work in that test site. So we are working to see how we can enhance people taking advantage of what the test sites have to offer, because we can't get the data that we need to better understand what the risks are and how to address them if we don't have people who are operating at the test sites.
Let me raise one other question having to do with news gathering organizations. We have broadcasters in the northern part of the state, southern end of the state, that currently fly helicopters. They fly helicopters over populated areas as a way to report the news. And it's allowed, I believe, by the FAA. Yes, sir. Not mistaken. All right. And I think most people agree that these operations are important. They inform the public, and it's all done to give them information I would consider in a timely fashion. UAS operations would seem to pose much less potential threat to people on the ground than helicopters do, and perhaps provide even greater benefit in the field of news gathering than even helicopters currently do. However, the current proposed rules would ban their use if even a single person is on the ground beneath them. Would the FAA consider a reasonable allowance for the use of UAS to cover newsworthy events that inform the public?
Well, sir, the reason that we have not authorized the use of UAS over populated areas is because the vehicle itself is not designed to any standards, not tested to any standards, not manufactured against any particular process, as opposed to manned vehicles, where I'm sure you're aware we have extensive standards for both the design and the manufacture to assure an appropriate level of safety. Right now, we haven't figured out how we can properly mitigate the risk of the unmanned vehicle, which does not meet a defined level of safety. And so we have required that it be kept away from people. We've asked for comment on that in the notice of proposed rulemaking, and we have recently, through an agreement that we had with CNN, been able to authorize their use of an unmanned system, not over a populated area, but in closer proximity than we had in the past, so that we can begin to learn more about just how we might be able to better mitigate that risk. We agree with you that there is a good use for UAS in the news gathering environment, but at this point, design and manufacturing standards are really not known to the FAA, and so it's hard for us to stand behind those.
Right. So it's not a problem with the idea. In fact, you don't even
Right.
have a problem with the idea. It's whether or not we get to a point in technology that we feel good enough that a unit is worthy enough to fly over other human beings. Is that?
That's very accurate.
Okay.
I mean, I believe if in fact there were to be an accident with a UAS over a populated area, the questions that this committee would be asking the administrator and me are, how is it that we authorize that?
You're right.
So we need to assure ourselves that we have done the safety analysis and that we've mitigated those risks before we can authorize the operation.
Thanks for your comments. Mr. Chairman, I'm done.